tuning into this earnings conversation with Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. I assure you, a conversation with her is never just about what's happening in the earnings of Biocon. Maybe some other things as well, but just since it's an earnings conversation, let me start off with that. Ms. Shaw, hope all is safe.
Absolutely, I'm feeling fine.
Super. And I would want to talk a little bit about that in terms of personal advice towards the end of the interview. But first, let's talk about Biocon. How did you think the quarter went by? I mean, at least on the growth front, it seems to have been maybe par for the course, or were you a bit disappointed?
I would say I was a little disappointed because I expected a much stronger performance in biologics. And I think that it was a little below par. And I think we can actually very rapidly course correct because we know why it happened, largely on account of operational issues, which I think are behind us. Having said that, we have still, delivered a 10% year-on-year growth at the consolidated level, and even at the segmental level, you can see that the biologics business or the biosimilars business did deliver 11% growth, and of course our generics business delivered the 8% growth, and the research services also did very well with a 12% growth. So I think overall we've done very well, but we could have done better. Let me put it that way. I think we also saw an impact of profitability because of higher R&D spends. We were also impacted by higher staff costs and of course forex losses. As you know, this year we had a 18 crore forex loss compared to a 13 crore forex gain last fiscal. So I think overall that's the way it muted the profit and earnings at a consolidated level. And as I said, if biologics had actually delivered on its plan, we would have seen a much more robust performance.
Is it, maybe it's too soon to ask, but it's 23 days into October. I'm just wondering if there are some telltale signs of biologics in particular or other areas starting to do a bit better than what they did in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what happened in Q4 last fiscal and then how it had a smart recovery in Q1, I think you're likely to see a similar kind of a recovery in Q3 because of, as I mentioned, we didn't have the ability to basically deliver on some of the numbers because of operational and logistics issues. So it's going to spill over into Q3 and then add to what is being planned in Q3. So that's why I remain confident that Q3 and Q4 should see a much stronger set of quarters.
What about a few launches? I mean, we didn't have a chance to, I think, talk when Semglee happened. Can you tell us a bit about how are you feeling about things done already in the quarter, things that might be on the anvil?
Well, Semglee has just been launched, so it's too early in this quarter to really comment on the performance of Semglee. But Q3 and Q4 will definitely reflect some indications of how Semglee has entered the US market. Having said that, we've also started entering some of the European markets with Semglee, including Spain this quarter. What is also important for me to mention is that, with the entry of Semglee, it actually expands our portfolio of biosimilars in the US market to 3. And that is the pegfilgrastim, trastuzumab, and now Semglee. And of course, if you add to that adalimumab and etanercept, which Mylan has also delivered to the market, it means that we are becoming a very sizable biosimilars company globally. Now, what is also important, the biosimilar pegfilgrastim, which basically had shown a retention of a 15% market share in Q2, last week actually reported even improved numbers of 17.5% market share. So that's a good uptick. In terms of insulin, in terms of biosimilar trastuzumab, where we had seen a kind of a combined share of 6% and a 10% market share of the 420 milligram presentation, last week's number actually indicates a 7.8% market share, which means it has increased from 6 to 7.8%. And obviously, it also reflects an increase over the 10% market share. So it's all tracking in the right direction.
And you have a launch, I think, as per what your guidance is when it comes to RH1 in FY22. The breadth of the pipeline, Ms. Shaw, are you impressed by that in the biosimilar space? I mean, there are a couple of brokerages houses who have said that with the kind of breadth that you have and the pipeline, it makes you arguably one of Mylan, or you makes you one of the most serious contenders in the emerging market space for biosimilars in the US. Would you go far as kind of concurring with that, or maybe adding more to it?
So we are certainly the largest pure play biosimilars company in the world today, which is really putting us into a very strong position. Why do I say that? Because if you look at some of our competition, they are not pure play biosimilars companies. Amgen, Pfizer, and others are not really pure play biosimilars company. Some of them are single biosimilars company like Coherus, but they could become pure play biosimilars companies in the future. I think from that point of view, obviously we have a very long and rich pipeline, and we're delivering on it very systematically. We have, biosimilar bevacizumab in, almost coming to the finishing line. We've got biosimilar Aspart, which is under review in both US and Europe. And we have many other products in the pipeline that should get into the market in the next few years. So we already have imminently 2 products which could come in before FY22. And we also have others which will follow. So I think from that point of view, we have a very, very large and long tail in terms of the portfolio of products. And we also obviously have a very strong presence as a biosimilars company. So we are unique in that sense of the word.
So 3 questions. One on how does this uniqueness and the growth opportunity translate into numbers, if you will. Then I'll move on to some valuation for the deal that you struck, and then finally a personal advice. But first, numbers, Ms. Shaw. Because as I see, currencies across the world are anyways very, very volatile as well. Nothing that guarantees that forex losses may or may not be there. So I won't go there. But do you reckon that the numbers will start looking up Q3, Q4, maybe the better part of FY22 compared to what they have in the first half?
Absolutely, because I think this is a unique, space that we are playing in. Right now, there is limited competition, which is good. But going forward, there is going to be more competition. But what will augur well for us is that we are the front movers, the lead in the kind of the leadership group of companies which have entered the biosimilars market. And as I said, because we are a pure play biosimilars company, obviously we are very focused on being cost competitive. And going forward, because there are going to be abbreviated pathways, we need to be faster and cheaper. Other companies will catch up because of the abbreviated pathways. In the past, companies have hesitated to move into this space because of the huge investments required to take a product to the market. But today, those numbers are going to reduce. So you are likely to see more companies coming into the fray. But having said that, it is not an easy business. So the complexity of getting a product to even cross the regulatory finishing line with an abbreviated pathway is not easy. So we expect competition to heat up, but not immediately, but over the coming years. So I think in that sense, we should keep building on our expertise and our strengths and keep sort of coming up with products from our pipeline faster and cheaper.
Okay. I take it as a summation that the second half will look probably much better than the first half.
Yeah, absolutely.
One question on Biocon Biologics as well, by virtue of that small investment. Well, for sake of saying a value of 3.5 to 4, right? It could be multiple times higher, what have you. Any thoughts on how does that piece move ahead? Do you get in more investments? Anything on that front?
So as you know, Neeraj, this is a very capital intensive business. It's dependent so much on R&D and being vertically integrated. We want to be a vertically integrated biosimilars company for the foreseeable future. Yes, many companies are trying to be virtual companies or asset light biosimilars companies. But I think long term, you've got to be vertically integrated to really be cost competitive and effective in the marketplace. So we have to make those investments, and we have made much of those investments. I think, we do look at private equity at this stage to allow us to make those capital allocations and not be too leveraged. And then we are in a very fine and fit position when we go to the market eventually for the IPO, where we will use those inflows to basically support our R&D pipeline.
So more private equity investments in the offing, Ms. Shaw?
Well, yes, we are in discussion with a few more. So we do expect to, take in a few more investments. But that will be the final before we go for an IPO.
Yeah. I would presume the valuations.
And also, it's important to set a benchmark of valuation. Already, the first investment of Tata Capital has given us an enterprise value of 4 billion and a sort of an equity valuation of 3.5 billion at the level at which they invested. And we hope that the investments that we might take in over the next few months will also reflect the kind of valuation of the business.
I'm guessing that means higher. Fair call. One last question, Ms. Shaw, and that's a bit of a personal question. Now that you've been there, done that, and your tweets were very inspiring when you went through the process, any learnings, any teachings that you would want to, or any quick tips that you would want to leave us with?
So the first thing I want to say is that we are in a much better place than where we started. Why do I say that? Because I think if you look at the numbers, although the top line numbers are scary, which is like every day you read it's inching towards 8 million people affected by COVID. I would really like to focus your attention to the active cases. The active cases are below 1 million, which is a fantastic number as far as I'm concerned, which means that we've got almost 90% of our people who have recovered, which is a very good sign. 85 to 88% of the people who have recovered. And when you look at the below 1 million people that need really hospitalization, obviously then we are not in that precarious situation where we don't have enough hospital beds. Now, the other thing is we are treating better. So our our fatality rates are coming down. We are at 1.5%, and I hope it comes even below that. And I really think that we have learned to deal with this disease a lot better than when we started. Moreover, we have got good drugs that are able to, not get people into a very concerned kind of a state. So today, as you know, Remdesivir was reported to have got full US FDA approval, which is a good sign. It lays to rest all the noise we've seen from the Solidarity trial. Also, I think drugs like ours, the Alzumab and the other drugs we are looking at antibody treatments and plasma therapy. I think they all have a place to be used at. You have to use it at the right time. And I think doctors who know how to use these drugs at the right time are really seeing great results in terms of patient recovery. So I think we need to focus on treatments, and we need to, of course, wait for the vaccines. But we must also remember that the vaccines are not going to ensure that you're cured for it. I mean that you are protected forever, because there are already a lot of signs to show that the COVID affected patients do develop good antibody responses, but they've also shown that mild patients do not even have IgG antibodies at a sort of a measurable level, which is also means that they can be reinfected very fast. The durability of response to vaccines are going to be. And then we need to see whether the mRNA vaccines have a higher durability of response than the adenovirus vaccines systems. So there's a lot of data to be gleaned from the, from the vaccines when they are finally approved. And it is likely that you're going to get a large number of emergency use authorizations, but it will be only 1 year down the line that you will really know how protected you are and for how long. And until then, I think you need good treatments to keep you safe and keep you from being fearful.
All of this is useful advice, ma'am. Thank you so much. And all the best for the next couple of quarters, at least for Biocon and Biocon Biologics. Hope you get the investments at much higher levels. Thanks for
Thank you and happy Dussehra.
Oh, yeah, of course. Happy festivities to you, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you.
And viewers, thanks for tuning in to this earnings conversation with Biocon.
Thank you.